Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Anna. I'm a clinical psychology doctorate student and I make videos about real life applications to psychology. So please hit like, please hit subscribe and the bell notification button if you're interested in that type of content. So in this video, we're talking about how to support someone who is depressed, how to support someone who's going through depression. So the first thing that I want to mention is understand that depression is a combination of many different things. It's a combination of neurobiology, genetics, temperament, and environment. Often all of these things, sometimes just a few of them, but almost never just one thing, unless it's a situational depression, for example, where environment is predominantly the main thing causing the depression. So depression is sometimes called by some psychologists anger turned towards the self. And I think that's a really powerful way of viewing it, even if it's not something I completely 100% agree with all the time. I have seen this firsthand where people who are depressed might seem irritable or explosive to other people, but it's nothing compared to how they're emotionally abusing themselves. So, for example, saying you're worthless to your partner is something that people would obviously acknowledge as abusive. But in depression, that's what the mind is telling yourself. So it makes a lot of sense that, it can be framed as abuse towards yourself in your own head. And depression is kind of like a lens through which you see the world. And it just kind of dims everything and makes everything look ugly and scary and upsetting. And it's impossible to just flip off like a switch. So when people tell their loved ones, I don't understand why you're depressed, why can't you just snap out of it? It's not that easy. And it's also not that your loved one is lazy or unmotivated. And also be aware that you won't be able to fix their depression for them. So just have realistic expectations before going into this video. So of course, one thing that's always super important is knowing how to recognize the signs of depression. So I'm just gonna run through all the symptoms really quick. One of them is feeling or seeming depressed, of course. So this could be saying I'm subjectively sad or having frequent tearfulness, things along those lines. Also loss of pleasure in things that they used to enjoy. So for example, if they always used to want to play tennis with you, but now they seem to have no interest in tennis anymore, that's something that could be concerning. And this is actually called anhedonia. So if I ever refer to anhedonia in this video, that's what that is talking about. Appetite or weight changes, so things like overeating, loss of hunger. Also insomnia or hypersomnia, so not being able to fall asleep or stay asleep, or not being able to wake up, or oversleeping or sleeping all day or for 12 hours at a time. Feelings of worthlessness or guilt, fatigue or loss of energy, and this could be mental energy as well, such as not having the energy to hold a conversation, for example. This is kind of linked to another symptom, which is an inability to concentrate. So this is kind of talking about that mental energy loss. And this could result in things like grade slipping or work performance not being as great anymore. And of course, recurrent thoughts of death are also a symptom, and that is the most concerning one. And if that is something that's clearly a very pressing issue, please call 911. Please get your loved one the help that they need. So the first kind of proactive thing that I want to suggest if your loved one is depressed is taking the lead. And this is sometimes called behavioral activation in psychology. And it's a form of cognitive behavioral therapy, which basically means instead of thinking about doing something without really thinking, just do the thing. So try to get them to go to a workout class with you or to hang out with you, grab dinner. Of course, in these times, you might have to make modifications because we can't be out and about in crowds like we used to. Don't feel discouraged if it doesn't work right away. So even if you can get them to do something with you 1 time out of 10, it could be a success. And you really have to kind of strike this balance between really pushing them out of their comfort zone, but also not pushing them too hard in that it's causing them more distress and causing them to maybe just push you away or get more depressed than they were. But behavioral activation is something that I think is really important, and of course it works best when they do it on themselves, but sometimes just kind of swooping in out of the blue and saying, now we're going to get ice cream, that can be something that can be really uplifting to them, because when you take the lead, they don't have to exert that mental or physical energy to do things anymore, because you're kind of in a way coercing them into doing things that make them feel good about themselves. Of course, another thing I recommend is to talk to them about their depression. So ask them about it and don't be afraid to address their depression. So say things like, how have you been doing? Ask a lot of really open-ended questions rather than really narrow ones like, have you been feeling depressed today? That's a little bit more narrow. But if you ask a more open-ended question, that allows them more freedom to really discuss what's actually on their mind at the moment. Also make sure to challenge their maladaptive thoughts. And this is usually the therapist's role, but you can do this as a friend as well. So for example, if they say something to you like, everyone hates me, you might want to challenge that by saying something like, okay, well, if that's true, why did your friends throw you a surprise birthday party last year? And not in a way that's going to, you're wrong, I'm right, this isn't a rational way to think. Not like that, but gently challenging these maladaptive cognitions and allowing them to see that maybe this isn't the best way to view things. Maybe there are other perspectives that might be a little more accurate or a little more healthy. And while you are talking to them about their depression, make them feel supported and heard, and listen more than anything so that they know that they can confide in you and that they can come to you if they're ever really facing a serious issue. Another recommendation I have is to help them get professional help. Research therapists in their area, help them figure out where their insurance covers, drive them to their first appointment, or wait in the waiting room to support them, or help them turn on the app if it's a Zoom appointment these days, because these things can be really tedious for someone who's already depressed, and it might be so overwhelming that they might be thinking, well, I barely have the energy to get up and brush my teeth in the morning, so where am I going to find the energy to look up a therapist that my insurance covers and actually get there and then actually talk about my issues and introduce myself in an entire session? So if you cut back some of those more concrete things, if you cut back on the things that might be difficult for them and just kind of pile up and seem overwhelming, this can really help them in getting the help that they need and focusing on the things that really matter, which is talking about their feelings and their thoughts and getting better. Another thing I want to mention is that if there is an environmental stressor that is causing their depression, such as a toxic work environment, for example, help them get the resources they need to get out of that situation. So, for example, if it is the toxic work environment, help them look for a new job, proofread their CV, do the mentally exhausting stuff that they might not have the energy for. And this is kind of along the same lines as helping them get professional help. You're doing the kind of logistical things so that they can focus on the real bulk of the issue, which is the mental work. Another recommendation I have is check in regularly to make sure that they're not spiraling and in immediate risk. And if they are in immediate risk, like I mentioned, call 911. So what do you do when their depression is negatively influencing you? Because of course they're in a terrible situation, but mental illness often impacts the people around the mentally ill person as well. So what do you do for yourself? I think being realistic with your expectations is really important. So if your depressed friend is committed to doing something with you and you know that there's a good chance that they might not actually come through, maybe having a backup in case they don't actually show up, or inviting someone else so that you can still go to that event that you were planning. And this way, you're not going to get resentful over them either, because you're going to know, yeah, this is kind of realistically what's probably going to happen, and I still want to help them, and I'm not going to get resentful over them because my life is going to keep going. And along the same lines, don't take it personally, because they're not doing this to hurt you, and don't take it as a personal failure if you don't see the progress that you want. Of course, setting boundaries is always important in any relationship. So, part of setting boundaries means do your best, but don't do all the heavy lifting. So for example, if they refuse to show up to every single therapy session and you were supposed to drive them there and they just never showed up to your car, then obviously set a boundary. Don't go doing that month after month after month. At some point you kind of have to say, look, I want to help you, but if you don't show up, there's not much I can do. And of course, the last thing I want to suggest is practice self-care for yourself. And if you can incorporate this with your best friend or partner or family member, then obviously do that as well. So if you can, go to a spa together, obviously that would be great because it would be incorporating their self-care as well as yours. But also take your own self-care, because you don't want to get burnt out or get compassion fatigue. and I have a whole video on that if you want to check that out. But self-care is always super important as well. So I hope this was useful. Let me know if you have any other suggestions in the comments down below, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you on Friday.